Let's make sure this is set to go. Hi, my friends. Happy Tuesday. Hopefully this is live. If you're watching the replay, please say hello. I'm so excited to dive into today's topic, which is talking about all about comparison. And I actually planned to talk about this like 2 weeks ago, but ironically, and of course, right? Like in the past week, I've had so many clients message me about this. So I feel like it's such a timely topic. And I'm really sharing my number one tip for overcoming comparison. I'm going to say the tip and then I'm going to unpack it over the next 20 minutes for you. And then I have two small announcements for you. Okay, so the biggest tip is to realize that in some way we're always going to be comparing ourselves to other people online. It's kind of an inevitable thing in life. But the goal is not to avoid it completely, but to minimize the time that it derails us. Okay, so maybe at first, you see someone online, you're comparing yourself, and you go spinning for like 3 days, essentially, right? Or you get off track. Ideally, you start to get better coping tools so that it really starts to only take 2 minutes, right? I think where we make ourselves wrong is where we expect to never fall prey to that at all, right? And it just happens where we can't always control the thoughts in our head, right? The thoughts that come up. But we can control what we do with it, right? And so next time you catch yourself comparing yourself to someone, don't make yourself wrong, right? Just be like, oh, there's that thing I do. There's that thing that everyone does, comparing themselves. But I'm not going to let it take me off track. I'm not going to let it derail me. Okay. So we're going to dive into that. I'm going to share some practical things that I do that I suggest to my clients. And we're going to dive into this because I think this is going to be really helpful so that you can stay in your own lane as you are showing up and getting visible, right? Because that's the biggest thing that I see that it keeps women from doing. Is getting visible. Okay, so 2 quick announcements, and then I have a story for you too. So first announcement is I've got to share this muffin recipe with you. So this weekend, I made some recipes, and one of them I made was this blueberry muffin, you guys, that is incredible, and it's healthy-ish. So I just shared the link in the Facebook group, but I'll post it here in the comments too, but it is an incredible, incredible muffin. You've got to try it. Number 2 is 2 more days left until Visible Impact Cart closes. So you still have time to reach out and connect with me and message me if you're looking for support in your business. I would love to help you get visible online over 6 weeks. It is a great program. There's trainings, there's live calls. I actually have, do you want to see a little draft? I won't see you too close. I actually have some snail mail I'm going to be sending you this round. And so if you have any questions, your next step is to message me, connect with me, and we'll see if it's a fit for you. Okay, story. What was the story I wanted to share? So what I find a lot of times for my clients is sometimes they're dry on content ideas when it comes to visibility. But also what I find is often it's not that they're dry on content ideas. They actually have a lot of ideas, but they're paralyzed in getting them out there in the world, right? Or a lot of times the beautiful thing about Invisible Impact, we sit and we content workshop together. And so I almost get an inside glimpse inside women's brains in real time as they're working to get visible. And what I found time and time again with, several women is that when they were saying, I can't write, I'm a bad writer, I can't get visible, I found that the block was actually not in that they didn't have the idea or they didn't have the thought or they didn't have the concept of what to write. The longest period of time and where they really got stuck was the time between the idea, the inspired thought, right? And then actually writing it on the paper, right? In between that, their brain said, don't write that, that's silly. Or maybe they wrote 2 sentences and they were like, backspace. That's not original, right? The imposter syndrome. Do I really have anything to say, right? I'm not perfect. I haven't, accomplished ultimate success yet, right? And so that's so important to know because then we stop telling ourselves the story of I'm a bad writer or I don't know what to say. And it's more like I just need to fast forward through the point of almost outrun my brain, my negative self-talk that's telling me that this isn't good enough, right? So I tell you that story to say, right, that often when we're in a season of comparison, it can get really, everything becomes much more difficult. It can be much more difficult to get visible. It can be much more difficult to sell, right? And so I think when we take care of that, right, when we do some practical, I'm going to share some practical things that I do in this area, as we narrow down on these practical things, you're going to find that visibility becomes easier. Sales becomes easier, right? Those little things become easier when you're able to silence the noise. And you guys, I feel like 2020 is a year where there's just a lot of noise, right? There's a lot of collective noise, right? There's a lot of noise in the online space, but there's also a lot of like probably noise in your life, right? Life is busy. And so I think the more we can do, instead of like, oh, what's wrong with me? I can't focus in 2020. The more we can do to actually get practical and silence that noise, the easier we make it for ourselves, right? Okay, so these are some practical things that you can do, right? Number one, that I talked about, my number one tip for overcoming that comparison, right, is not making yourself wrong when you notice yourself comparing yourself to someone, right? And making that time get shorter and shorter every time, right? Of the time between when you see something and you start comparing yourself to when you move on and accept and like celebrate for them. Hey, I'm super glad that you're achieving that. I'm super happy for your success. And also, I'm going to go get my own success, right? And also, I know your success doesn't mean that there's less success for me, right? And the beautiful thing, I wrote this in the group last week, is can you believe that what if some women in your life, in your business, were actually comparing themselves to you, right? Remembering that, right? And remembering that in some ways that's okay. I think sometimes we shy back from sharing our successes or celebrating because we don't want to seem braggy, right? Or we don't want to make other people feel small. But I think at the end of the day, right, like whether we're comparing ourselves to someone else or someone's comparing themselves to us, it's just remembering it's showing us what's possible. And maybe this sounds crazy, but I have this theory that when we're jealous or when we're comparing, right, it's because there's something in that we desire, right? Let me know if you found that to be true for you, right? And so instead of being like, oh, there's something wrong with me, I can't do anything, right? Instead of looking at that like, oh, wow, she's showing me a version of what's possible for me, right? And if we fully believed that that was possible for us, right? Instead of derailing it, it would inspire us. What if when we got stuck comparing ourselves, instead of that derailing us, like what happens, I find a lot of times for me or, for my clients, when you're comparing is it makes you feel like what you're doing is wrong and that you need to shift or you need to change your strategy or that you need to change your platform, or maybe if I did it a little bit more like her, or maybe if I looked more like her, or maybe if I had a personality like her, or all those things, right? But what if when you caught yourself comparing, right, instead of feeling like you had to change something about yourself, you realized that, wow, because of her success, that gives me permission to double down on my success, to double down on who I am for my people, right? You would show up radically different, right? And then we wouldn't really avoid comparing ourselves. We would be like, wow, look at all these amazing women that are showing me what's possible, right? And not in like a competitive way, but being able to be like, you know what? I could soar right past them, right? And this belief, I have this belief, and you're welcome to borrow it if this is helpful for you, but really believing that, the people that I follow online, what if someday I'm their mentor? What if someday they hire me, right? Realize that it's like, and I do this too. Like I have hired my clients before. If they have a service that I need that they offer, I've had clients hire me, you know what I mean? Like I've hired friends have hired me. Like I think sometimes we like make it this big thing, and this has to do with imposter syndrome too, right? Where we feel like it's like us versus them, instead of realizing like, what if we're all in this together? What if we can all succeed and rise together? Okay. Let's see. So some practical things I do though, practically, in order to like break up the time between like when I start comparing myself and how to break from that, is do something practical. Number one, like unplugging from technology, right? In fact, what I really have done lately is instead of like scrolling the social media feed, like Facebook or Instagram, I'll just go right to the people's accounts that I want to check out. I won't just like scroll the general feed. That's like more like preventative tip. And then if I'm caught in the cycle itself, I will like vox a friend, journal my thoughts, sit down with a cup of tea, somehow just like start to reflect. I actually do a daily reflection. You can catch my podcast episode, The 5 Questions I Ask Myself Every Morning. It's actually 6 now, but I check in every morning. And I find that that's just a time to be able to check in with myself and to brain dump and just to journal, because I find that when I do that, I'm able to see like, that's what I'm doing. I'm comparing myself. I need to stop that, right? Okay. And then also what helps is revisiting my why and just re-looking at getting back on my track. Okay, what am I supposed to be doing this week? Okay, what's important to be doing in my business, right? And so I think at that point, it's so important that we're realigning with what's my to-do list? What am I supposed to do today? How am I doing at getting visible in my own way, even if it's quirky, right? Even if it's imperfect. How am I doing at selling today, right? And allowing what other people do to inspire you, but not derail you. Okay, I want you to remember that. And even maybe write that on a sticky note. That way, the next time that you get stuck comparing yourself, I want you to hear that in your head from me. Like, I want you to hear these words, right? Stop letting it derail you. Start to let it inspire you. And if you want a journal prompt around it, right? I think something important to ask yourself is, what about that thing that I'm comparing myself to? What about that woman that I'm comparing? Do I want and do I believe is not accessible to me? Okay, way to go deep, right? Like, what about that do I want? May not be everything, but what about that version of success or that person's life, or at least the perception? Because we don't even know if it's real, right? What people show on Instagram is like a highlight reel, right? But I think it's looking at and being like, what about that is my heart attracted to, and not making that wrong. And then the second question is, and feel free, would you guys write this in the comments if you're joining me live, right? What about that success am I attracted to or am I aligned with? And then the second part is, what about that do I believe, like what, how do I phrase this? Like what about that do I believe I can't have, right? What do I believe that's off limits for me? Because again, I think that's where the comparison derails us instead of inspires us, is when we're not clear on what about it do I want, and how am I not letting myself have that, right? Because if we, right, got clear on, I'm seeing that girl and she's traveling. I really want to travel, right? Or I'm seeing her and she looks really happy. I want to be happy, whatever it is. Like actually nailing that thing and then writing, do I believe it's possible for me to be happy? Do I believe that it's possible for me to have success in my business, to have success in my weight loss journey, whatever it is, right? What is it? Because you might surprise yourself what it is, and then actually believing, do I actually believe that that's possible for me, right? And letting that story be an inspiration, right? Letting that story be hope for you, because I'll tell you, I know for sure I would have quit my online business long ago if at the start of my business I didn't see real practical examples of other women doing what I was doing, that I knew, right? That I was connected to, even if it was online. I remember even before I signed my first client, like there was this little video series that someone put out about how these 5 women signed their first client. And it was like just 5 women telling their real practical story on the exact story on how they signed their first client. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I get it. And I didn't feel comparison about that. I felt like inspired and it felt very helpful. But part of that was because I knew what I wanted and I believed it was possible for me, right? I was like, yeah, I totally believe that's possible. It's going to be easy for me to set my first client. I can do that, right? And so I think both of those elements are so key, right? Being super clear on what is it about that person has that I want, and not feeling guilty or ashamed for wanting that, having that desire, saying it out loud, right? And then also believing it's 100% possible. So here's this, right? What if instead of feeling like, oh, I wish I saw less women, to compare myself to, or less website designers that had great websites than even though I design sites, whatever it is that you're comparing, right? Really believing that, again, that's possible for you, right? And that every time you see an example of that, that it's evidence, right? Thank you, God. Thank you, universe, for that evidence that that success, that is possible for me. Okay, I hope that this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. I know that this is a big topic, but again, I really feel like if you can shorten, and it sounds crazy, but next time you catch yourself comparing, I want you to write the amount of time it takes you to get over it. Because again, it's not wrong that we like get caught in that trap of comparing ourselves. But I would say, like at the start of my business, when I compared myself to others, it derailed me for sometimes a week. Right. And what it looked like, how it derailed me is I started doubting myself. I started like switching up my strategy. I started, shrinking back from selling. I started like changing up my offers. I started working on something out. Like it distracted me for a week. Right. Even though I didn't realize until hindsight, oh my gosh, I've been distracted this whole week ever since I saw that girl post on social and I was comparing myself to her. Right. Versus now what it looks like when I compare myself to someone online, I would say it's about like a 3-minute process where I start to like spin, catch what I'm doing, journal it out, message my coach, right? Share with a friend, and then it's done, right? And so again, don't make yourself wrong for the comparison, but I do want you to start collapsing the time. So instead of a week, it's 3 days. Instead of 3 days, it's a day. Instead of a day, it's an hour. Instead of an hour, it's 5 minutes, right? Instead of 5 minutes, it's 30 seconds, right? And you like challenge yourself, write that down, right? Really refine that system for how you get through it, because the faster you do, right, the easier it's going to be to get visible, to sell, all of those things. Okay, if you caught the replay, feel free to drop any questions that you had for me. And also feel free to reach out if you have any questions on visible impact. Again, we start in 2 days. We start in a week, but the cart closes on Thursday in two days. So if you have any questions, just reach out to me. I would love to connect you and support you for 6 weeks on all this stuff, right? Yes, getting visible for 6 weeks and creating content for 6 weeks. But the reason I wanted to do this training today is because I think so often feel like, I'm missing a big visibility secret. I'm missing the code. And how did you grow your Facebook group to 10,000 women, right? How did you grow your email list so big? How did you get so many reviews on your podcast, right? And I think I'm happy to share the tips and tricks and strategies, right? Yes, I give a really clear engagement funnel formula for creating 4 social posts a week so that you can be consistent online on your social platform. But more so than that, what I also want to support you on is getting confident, right? And clearing any blocks that are keeping you from naturally being visible, right? Because it sounds crazy, but I feel like in its truest form, and how I designed all my frameworks for visible impact is around how I saw women interacting authentically in person, right? The engagement funnel, engagement, authority, authenticity, sales, all of that is developed from how you connect in person, how you connect in real life, how you build authentic relationship. And that's what I find converts the very, very best in your visibility. Anyway, so yes to all the frameworks. Yes, I gave you a content prompt workbook. Yes, you have a ton of training videos. Yes, you have a 6-week content planner. But more so than that, I want to be able to make visibility easier for you. And the best way I know how to do that is help you, support you on your mindset along the journey, right? And so if you are into that, and if you're like, yes, I need strategy, but more than anything, I need to like get out of my own way so that I can be visible, so that I can shine, right? I know this stuff. So many women that have joined Visible Impact this round have told me, I've been invisible online before, right? I know this stuff. I know how to get visible, but there's something that's holding me back from showing up at the next level, right? There's something that's holding me back from getting consistent in my visibility so that I can get consistent income, so that I can stop the feast and famine cycle of income, right? And so that I can consistently sign clients. Know that I would love to support you over those 6 weeks. The next round won't be probably for another 6 months. And so if you're looking for support in getting consistently visible in your content, know that I would love to support you in that. And your next step would be to message me. Send me a personal message here on Facebook, and we can chat and see if it's a fit for you. Okay, my loves, I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I will catch you on Thursday.